Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Happy Monday. We are actually on our second chapter in the book, The Woman They Made into a Monster. So we're on chapter 2, The Plan Behind the Pink House. The public was told to picture Gypsy Rose Blanchard as helpless, a frightened daughter, a trapped child, a prisoner in a wheelchair, someone as controlled, so broken, so desperate that murder became the only door left open. That is the version millions accepted. But court records, police summaries, later trial evidence, and Nicholas Godejohn's own statements tell a far darker and more deliberate story. They do not show a woman stumbling blindly into violence. They they show planning, they show concealment, they show a knife, gloves, stolen money, bus travel, online messages, a false identity, and a dead mother left in her bed while her daughter fled across state lines. Dee Dee Blanchard did not die in the middle of a chaotic argument. She did not die during a sudden struggle. She was killed while she was sleeping. That fact alone changes the moral weight of the story. And that to me, guys, is the biggest thing. It was not like it was a fight and all of a sudden she had to fight for her life or she got so mad. It was what do they call it? A heat of passion. It was nothing like that. It's like Gypsy laid in wait for her mother to fall asleep. And then her weapon, which was Nicholas Godejohn, showed up to do the deed. Think about that. Whatever arguments people make about the years before the murder, whatever accusations are made against Dee Dee, nothing changes the final image at the center of the case. A woman was lying in her own bed, in her own home, at her most defenseless, when the person she had spent her life caring for helped bring death to her bedroom. The public conversation often rushes past that, but it should not. According to the prosecution summary and investigative materials, Gypsy and Nicholas Godejohn were originally charged in Greene County, Missouri, with first-degree murder and armed criminal action after Dee Dee was found dead in June 2015. Gypsy later accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Nicholas went to trial, was convicted of first-degree murder, and received life in prison. That difference in outcomes shaped the way that public saw them. Gypsy became the survivor. Nicholas became the killer. Dee Dee became the monster. But the paperwork underneath the headlines is not nearly that simple. Investigative summary states that when Gypsy and Nicholas were interviewed separately after their arrest, Gypsy initially placed responsibility on Nicholas. She reportedly told detectives that Nicholas killed Dee Dee because Nicholas and Claudine did not get along. She also claimed she had been forced to stay in the bathroom during the killing and had to participate afterward. Nicholas gave a different version. According to the same investigative summary, Godejohn confessed that he stabbed Claudine Blanchard while she slept and stated that Gypsy gave him the knife and gloves. More importantly, he said the whole idea to kill Claudine was Gypsy's idea. and he would not have killed her if Gypsy had not asked him to kill her. That sentence is devastating. Not because Nicholas Godejohn should be treated as innocent. He was convicted for what he did, and what he did was horrific. But his statement matters because it directly challenges the softer public image of Gypsy as a passive figure swept along by someone else's violence. In his account, he was not the origin of the idea, he was the instrument. And that distinction matters. Nicholas Godejohn was not a sophisticated criminal mastermind. His lawyers argued that he was on the autism spectrum and had an IQ of 82. Later reporting about his appeal also described expert testimony suggesting that his autism made him vulnerable to manipulation, especially through role play videos and messages. Whether a jury accepted that as a legal defense is one question. Whether it should cause readers to look more carefully at Gypsy's influence over him is another. Because if Nicholas had limited social understanding, obsessive attachment, and deep emotional dependence on Gypsy, then the question becomes deeply uncomfortable. Who was leading whom? The evidence of planning did not stop with Nicholas's statement. Prosecutors pointed to text messages exchanged between the two in the days before the murder. Investigative summaries also noted that Gypsy had a video on her phone showing a stabbing motion over Dee Dee's bed. Other summaries stated that Gypsy admitted giving Nicholas the knife. This was not a stranger breaking into a house. This was not an unknown attacker. This was not a random act. This was someone Dee Dee's daughter invited into the home. Gypsy let Nicholas inside. She gave him access. She provided materials. She knew why he was there. She knew where her mother was sleeping. Then, while Dee Dee was being stabbed, Gypsy was not running to a neighbor, not calling police, not screaming for help. By her own account, she was in the bathroom. The horror of the scene is almost impossible to sit with for long. Dee Dee had spent years being told by the world that she was admired for caring for Gypsy. She had been photographed beside her daughter. She had attended public events. She had organized medical care, charity appearances, travel, treatments, prescriptions, and appointments. Then, in the last moments of her life, the daughter she had raised helped arrange the conditions for her death. Afterward, the behavior becomes even harder to reconcile with the images of helpless panic. Police materials and later summaries describe disturbing Facebook posts appearing from Dee Dee and Gypsy's shared account. One said, "That bitch is dead." Another claimed, "I effing slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet innocent daughter. Her scream was so effing loud. LOL." The messages were gruesome. They were grotesque. They were designed to shock. They turned a dead woman into a spectacle before her body had been found. According to investigative summaries, Gypsy admitted posting comments so no one would find her mother sooner. That explanation has always deserved scrutiny. A person who wants help can call 911. A person who wants her mother found can contact a neighbor. A person who wants authorities involved can walk to the door, scream, knock, ask, plead. Instead, the world was given a performance. That is what makes the case feel so cold. Not simply the murder itself, but the staging afterward. Dee Dee was dead in her room, and the internet was being used to announce it with cruelty. Then came the escape. The records describe Gypsy and Nicholas leaving Missouri and traveling toward Wisconsin. At the Greyhound station, Nicholas reportedly gave Gypsy a false name, Bella Godejohn, and represented her as his sister. Gypsy also reportedly wore a wig so people would not recognize her. There are not the These are not the actions of someone with no awareness of wrongdoing. They are the actions of people trying not to be caught. That detail matters because Gypsy's public image often depends on the idea that she did not understand her own agency. But the escape plan suggests awareness. The false name suggests awareness. The bus trip suggests awareness. The stolen money suggests awareness. The mailing of evidence back to Wisconsin suggests awareness. And awareness is the thing the public narrative often avoids. The story becomes even darker when considering prior violence. Public Records has described a 2011 incident in which Gypsy shot Dee Dee multiple times with a BB gun loaded with metal bullets, allegedly believing it was a real. Dee Dee was rushed to the ER and reportedly told others the injuries came from a robbery attempt. Even if one accepts the argument that Gypsy felt trapped, the BB incident shows that the idea of violence against Dee Dee did not appear for the first time in June 2015. It had existed before. It had been acted on before. Dee Dee had already been harmed by her daughter before. That makes the final murder feel less like a sudden escape and more like an escalation. And it makes Dee Dee's position more tragic. Imagine being an aging, medically fragile woman whose entire life has revolved around your daughter's care. Imagine trying to manage doctors, bills, charity systems, housing, medications, appointments, and public scrutiny. Imagine being called difficult, controlling, manipulative, and even after death, while the person who helped arrange your murder becomes a public figure with fans, interviews, documentaries, and social media applause. This is why Dee Dee's humanity matters. Not because she was perfect, not because every allegation against her must be dismissed, but because murder does not become morally clean just because the victim is complicated. Gypsy's supporters often speak as though Dee Dee's alleged wrongdoing erased her right to live. That is a dangerous idea. It is also an idea that true crime culture rarely admits it is promoting. People do not always say she deserved to die. Instead, they say, what else was Gypsy supposed to do? The effect is often the same. It turns a sleeping woman's death into a solution that should disturb us. The court outcome also deserves attention. Gypsy's guilty plea meant she never faced the same full public trial Nicholas did. The evidence against her was never tested in front of a jury in the same way. Her abuse narrative became part of the plea context. Nicholas, by contrast, went to trial and absorbed the full weight of the system. This is not to argue Nicholas was innocent. It is asked whether it is to ask whether Gypsy's public image benefited from never having to sit to the same full evidentiary reckoning. There is something especially chilling about the way responsibility shifted after arrest. According to the investigative summary, Gypsy initially presented Nicholas as the central actor and suggested he had forced or driven the violence. Nicholas, meanwhile, claimed Gypsy gave him the knife and gloves and that the murder was her idea. The contrast is stark. One person tried to distance herself. The other admitted the physical killing, but pointed back toward the person who asked for it. That is where the reader must pause, because the popular version asks us to see Gypsy mainly as a victim of Dee Dee. The document asks us to consider Gypsy as something else, too: a planner, a manipulator, a daughter who knew her mother was asleep and still helped bring a killer into the house, a person who fled afterward, a person used a false name, a person who let the dead woman remain undiscovered until vile Facebook posts forced people to look. Those facts do not require exaggeration. They are disturbing enough on their own. The saddest part is that Dee Dee's voice is absent from all of it. We have Gypsy's version. We have Nicholas's version. We have lawyers, documentaries, social media, commentary, commentators, social neighbors, family members, fans, critics, producers. But Dee Dee herself is silent. She cannot explain what she feared. She cannot explain what she knew. She cannot answer the allegations. She cannot describe her final years. She cannot tell us whether she knew her daughter had already crossed a line she might one day never come back from. She is simply gone. And in her absence, others built a story around her body. This chapter is not asking the reader to believe Dee Dee was flawless. It is asking the reader to look at the murder itself without flinching, to see the woman in the bed, to see the planning before the knife, to see the false name after it, to see the daughter who blamed the boyfriend when police arrived, to see the vulnerable man who said he never would have done it had Gypsy not asked. And finally, to ask a question that should have been asked from the beginning. What if the story was never about a helpless girl escaping a monster? What if the monster narrative was useful because it made the murder easier to forgive? Guys, that is the end of chapter 2. We're going to hit chapter 3 tomorrow. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and reading this book. So far, I think it's a wonderful read. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.